Crafty Hope. Welcome. I'm working in this little journal again. Disregard this cover. This was just me like doodling on here, and it's awful, and I fully intend when I get this full to do something with the cover, or maybe during, I don't know. Right now I'm focused on the pages. So I, for some reason, pulled out this butterfly, so I'm starting with maybe a focal, and I've got my little jar of, it's my French Vanilla Cafe General Foods International coffee tin that I put snippets of words. Some of these are things I've cut out. Some are things I've printed and cut out. Here's a fortune cookie fortune. I think I'm going to see if I can find... Oh, something just flew out at me that says Jubilee. No, that doesn't feel right. I'm going to see what I can find that might go... I might just change my mind.
Y'all, that was a horrible introduction. I am sorry about that. So I have picked out this little card that says, I'll see you in my dreams. I don't like the "I'll" because it didn't have the apostrophe. And anyway, I'll end up cutting it off in the end. So welcome. I am Hope at Crafty Hope. I have this little junk journal that I made using, it's not so much junk. I mean, the cover and all is junk because it's cardboard, but the pages are all from book pages, and for the most part I cover them up. So I've been experimenting with starting with a focal and or a sentiment, which is not usually how I start a page, and I did with this one. I will admit this page itself is all over the place. So we're gonna get through it together and kind of see what comes of it. So it was definitely a bit of play. I've got a box of scraps and whatnot, and I am using an Uhu glue stick to stick them down onto this book page. And this, helps when I'm collaging these down. Sometimes I'm trying to get a jumping off point, and sometimes I'm just trying to cover up the paper because for some reason the paper is flawed. Sometimes ink has spilled from previous pages. Sometimes it's brittle and needs that bulky buildup. And in this case, I think I just wanted to get started, get a jumping off point, kind of get my hands moving to figure out where I'm going. So I can tell I'm trying to finish up here because I'm putting down more transparent layers. And yeah, I'm playing with just whatever. I am enjoying the mix of colors on here. And there were little snippets of things. I'm going to add, I think, a stamp, or two. I don't even remember. But I really like the texture because some of the papers had different thicknesses and, of course, the tearing. And then I've got these little bits of things, the stamp and the ticket and all that I think are super neat, that I'm going to try to add to this. So I'm just, y'all, futzing with this stuff, pulling little things out. I liked that little bit of fabric because it kind of went with some of the colors that I had collaged down. And I keep flipping around. Skipped a little bit ahead there. And what I decided to do was to grab an embossing ink pad, some clear embossing powder, and a round eraser. So I'm going to use this round eraser as a stamp because I don't have I may, but in my hand carved supplies, I don't have just a big circle. And so that's all I really wanted, was to stamp several circles on here to try to have like exposed portions of the page. That's the idea anyway, just kind of an experimental play. So I'm kind of going through that, stamping my embossing powder with my round eraser. And then I am adding the embossing powder, shaking it off, trying to keep everything separate. And you can see I'm shaking it into a little file folder. It was actually a big file folder that I cut down. Yeah. So, and I'm just placing my journal on top of that as I continue to work. My concern was having the ink dry before I could get the embossing powder down. So that's why I'm working in kind of little snippets of this. So I think this is probably going to be my last one for now. I'm going to come back and do, I think, at least one, if not two more, in just a second. So I'm, using that file folder to pick up all of that embossing powder, put it up, save it, and I don't know what I'm doing off camera. Um, and then I'm going to take my heat gun, and this is like an embossing heat gun, so it gets super hot, so it can melt that embossing powder into like a plastic surface. So it's gonna melt. This one is I don't know. I think because of the stamp that I used, it's not gonna be a super fine, beautiful kind of embossing. It's gonna have little bubbles and ripples in it, which is fine for me because that's just additional texture, and I do love some additional texture. So over there on the right, I think you can see it, that bit of a receipt kind of darkened up when I heated it with the embossing ink and powder and all that. And I thought that was kind of cool. But anyway, I decided I wanted to do a few more. At this point, I still wasn't quite sure exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to make these circles like windows into some of the elements on the page, because I didn't want to just cover them up, but I wanted this to feel a little more cohesive. So I knew that I was probably going to bring some gesso or something like that into it to kind of push back and make all of those little pieces a little more, cohesive. Did I say that? That's a word I like. I like cohesive. I like it to be fair and everybody to have a bit of a part in it. So I'm going to heat those last two that I just made. And I was trying to keep it in odd numbers because odd numbers, are more attractive to the eye. But I'll tell you, then when I look at this, I really only see 4 of them because of how I finished out this page. Once I have that all heated, I've come back with my white gesso. I'm going to prayer it out over everything, as you can see. And some of those papers are going to absorb it just a little bit more than some of the others. I prayed off the excess, and then I've got, well, I can't tell if it's a baby wipe or a paper towel. I think it's a baby wipe because it looks kind of small. But I'm going over this whole page with it kind of wiping away. And you can see how that one where the ticket is really does wipe away beautifully. And some of the other areas are not, but I'm pulling it back a lot. That's got to be a baby wipe. And then I'm going to dry the gesso, trying to be careful not to remelt the embossing powder. And then that is some acrylic ink in Payne's Gray. I believe that's the Daler Rowney FW acrylic ink that I think I probably put too much. So, but I did add water. I'm going to use a super wet paintbrush, move that around, try not to get it everywhere, and then pick up some of that ink with a paper towel, so something dry. And then I'm going to use that same paper towel to kind of open up those windows again, clean them off a little bit. And again, when I heat this, that may like reactivate the embossing powder and absorb some of the ink. So I want to get as much of it off as I can and let the rest of it soak into what is paper there. So I'm trying to clean my little windows. I just thought it was neat because I had, like I said, that stamp there that I thought was super neat. And I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this page and I'm like, oh yeah, that is super cool. So I wanted to accentuate some of the texture that's on those windows because, like I said, when I melted that embossing powder, it has some like ripply surface to it. So I'm trying to find a wax or something that I can go over it. This is the Finnabair Aged Wax, Art Alchemy, whatever it is. It's I can't think what it's called. Nowadays you don't buy them in these little tins. They come in tubes, like the you can see over to my right is the Rub and Buff. Oh my gosh. And so the Art Alchemy wax now comes in like little tubes. But anyway, I'm going over very as lightly as I can the texture that is on these just to kind of highlight them because I was feeling like my windows were blending into the background a bit too much. So I'm just going over them a little bit, I'll end up accenting them even more, like as a final step to this, and you'll see that in just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to put all of that up now that I've accented those, and I think I'm probably in my head, I'm like, okay, I know what I would do. And what I would do is to start messing around with my focal. But no, I'm not. I decided to bring some gold into the rest of the page. So I grabbed some gold because it was near me. I probably could have grabbed some gold acrylic ink, but because this gold acrylic paint was in my reach, I grabbed it and watered it down quite a bit to make some splatters just around on the page, and that helps bring that gold that I put on the circles on the rest of the page. And then I'm going to dry this again. Now I'm going to mess around with my focal. I've got that little phrase there that I'm cutting. I'm trying to decide, yep, I'm going to cut off the it says ill because it doesn't have the apostrophe. And y'all, I'm such a grammar person that I was like, yeah, no, I don't want that there. So I cut it off. And I'm playing with the placement of this butterfly and the sentiment, trying to figure out how they work together. And that sentiment, that typed up sentiment came from, I got a whole deck. Well, I've got this big, like, I don't even know a container that had a bunch of these cards in it. They were like 4x6 cards that somebody was using almost like a library card catalog, but it was all albums. So I think it was cataloging somebody's like album collection because it's all singers and albums and songs. And so I've been I sat down for a while and was cutting them out and just sticking them in that tin, but I had to stop because I just had so many. So I've got a bunch more to cut out at some point. But as you can see, I futzed with several things, some thread, pulled out some, I think that's some fabric that I got a little bit of coffee on. And so, yeah. So I pulled that, tore it down, and decided that I really wanted this to run just straight up and down the middle of my page, but my page was feeling super dark, so I grabbed some white acrylic paint. This is the Lucas Titanium White acrylic paint, and I'm making just marks with a pretty pointy, small round brush. I say pointy, it's a round brush. So I'm just trying to get some mark making in there and some brightness on here because it just felt super dark. And I know I'm going to put down that focal strip and all, which will also brighten this, but I wanted that brightness to kind of come through in the background as well. And it's weird that I put it straight in the middle. I will almost always put a focal in the rule of thirds with photography and layout and all that, kind of where lines cross in a tic-tac-toe board, where the lines cross is almost always where I'm going to put some kind of focal. But for this one, I was like, no, it's going to go straight down the middle. And that's just weird for me. All right, so I did ink up the edges of my sentiment there, and I decided I needed to bring some gold also into my focal. So I am taking that same little bitty paintbrush and that wooden butterfly chip, I don't know what it is, but I'm going around the outside edges of it and painting it kind of like it's been soldered with gold. So the outside edge is gold, just to frame it up a little bit and give it a bit more importance. So this takes a little while. I think I've sped this up quite a bit because I was being super futzy with it, trying not to get like on the black of the butterfly, and I don't know, but still kind of bring that gold color in a little bit. So when that is done, I'm going to let everything I put it off to the side, let it dry a little bit. And see here, I'm trying to bring it over to the right edge. And I was like, that's not right. Okay, what about this left edge where the other, like I said, the tic-tac-toe lines, putting them on those lines or where it crosses. And I didn't like it. I wanted it right there in the middle. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go for this. So I'm adding a few more of my marks because I've covered up so many of them by putting that in the middle. So I'm just going to bring a few more in so it looks like they're coming out from underneath that strip of fabric. And that Tripper fabric, I have to tell you that it has the coffee dye on it, but that fabric is some kind of a non-natural fabric, I suppose, because it did not absorb the coffee the way you would think it would. So I decided to frame up this page a little bit. I'm using my R2 rollerball pen from Dollar Tree to just draw a sketchy frame around it and then do a little bit of scribbling around on the page. Now, while this ink is wet before it dries, if you take a wet paintbrush or a water brush or whatever and hit those lines, it gets super bleedy, and I love that. So that's what I'm doing. It's one of those things I just love to do, put a scribble down and blur the lines up a bit. So that's what I'm doing, is blurring a few of those, the frame, the scribbles that I made, just adding a little bit of grungy accent to it. Super fun for me. I don't know why I like that blurry blendiness, but it's my jam. And of course, I'm going to audition those pieces again, make sure I still like them, see what needs to go, and finally go, okay, Hope, let's glue this down. So I have got that fabric and some Beacon 3-in-1 glue that I just put down the center of my page, and where that fabric's not sticking, I of course pulled it up and put it down. And I'm going to use that same glue, I think, to put both of my other elements down, just because it's a pretty firm glue. If I didn't use that for this super thick wooden piece, I would have used some E6000 or tacky glue. Now, it's a bit of overkill to use that glue with this little strip, but it's fine. It's going to hold it in place beautifully. So I'm going to weigh all of these down for just a second and come back and decide. I think here is where I decide that my circles that I worked so hard to make just are not showing up. So since I do have coffee on that piece of fabric, I've activated my instant coffee, and I'm using that same little brush with that, because I didn't put a whole lot of water in that instant coffee. So it's pretty strong. I'm going around my circles and actually framing them up. So to me, this is, I don't know, the windows are there. You kind of see the under paper, some of the things I glued down, the ticket, the stamp, that receipt, kind of the messiness of life. But that little card says, my sentiment says, see you in my dreams. So that kind of like, kind of shows the randomness and messiness that you'll find in dreams. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and splatter a little bit of that coffee around on my page, and that will be the end of it. I'm going to give you a couple looks at this. Let me know what you think. This was a bit all over the place for me, and I think I like it. I'm not sure. I liked the experimentation of this page. So I would love to know what you think of it. And if you've had any success with making little windows with embossing powder like that, let me know, because they worked, but they weren't great. So give me your tips, your suggestions. I would love to hear it. We're about to go into a new year, y'all. I hope it is a good one for you. I will see y'all very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.